computer. Okay, so again, hello. Today we'll be looking at the endocrine system and metabolism. Two important things, and they do work hand in hand because functions of the endocrine system and the subsequent secretions from their associated organs does affect metabolism within the body itself. Interestingly, though, to take note with the endocrine system, in terms of a response, the response could be on the order of hours or days, with the exception of adrenaline, which actually kicks in very fast via the adrenal glands found on top of the kidneys. That is on the order of seconds once it is secreted. But generally speaking, in terms of the effects of the hormones, it usually is slower on the order of days and weeks, as opposed to when you look at another system, the nervous system, that response is on the order of seconds or sometimes milliseconds, depending on which pathway is actually taken. So we're going to look at the endocrine system. The lecture is present there. So let's have a look at some of the questions and see what has to be said, about the endocrine system. Very interesting. All right. So question number one, let's go. All right. So along with the nervous system, what system coordinates the various activities of the body? And what's the answer to that one?
The endocrine.
So the circulatory.
All right. Why the person who say endocrine? Why did you say endocrine? That's a good one. Yeah. Any particular reason? Why did you say endocrine?
So because just like the nervous system, it also helps with other activities in the body.
Right. So similar to the nervous system. Now it also assists in with other functions in the body. That is true. All right. And the other person I want to say is Miss Rock. What were you saying in terms of your response?
So it wasn't me.
Oh, it wasn't you. Okay,
It
but
was me, Shania.
Shania. Okay, Shania. Yeah. What do you have concerning
The
that?
circulatory system.
Yeah. So why did you say that one? Why did you say circulatory system?
So because I believe that is the most important one because
And
it moves blood around the body.
right. So it's not really, like I say, some books do have circulatory, but there's really another one. Is another word that begins with C. That is more comprehensive in the scope. Circulatory, because we do have more than one circulatory system, you could argue that respiratory system is circulatory, and you could also argue that the endocrine system, the lymphatic system is also circulatory. So what would be a better term, another C, to describe that?
Cardiovascular.
Yeah, the cardiovascular, because that one specifically then relates to the heart and its supporting vessels. Right, and of course, most critically, of course, the blood that runs through it. So while you would see circulatory in some, the quote-unquote more correct term is really cardiovascular. Yeah, so do keep that in mind. All right. So, so I understand in terms of, so even though they have it here, right, as circulatory, it just goes to show cardiovascular is really, a better term. So along with the nervous system, what system coordinates the various activities of the body parts? Now, the circulatory or the cardiovascular, it's a pathway by which it happens. But in terms of what coordinates it, as the first person mentioned, is really the endocrine system. And it does so by the secretion of various hormones. Right, so that is very important to take note in terms of with the nervous system. So you have the nervous system, it gives a very rapid response. So like for instance, somebody touches you on your back, somebody touches you on your back, and it could give a response. For those of us who have animals, you might be aware of that. Anybody ever sneaked up on a cat and touched the back of a cat? Yeah, I did that when I was about 7 years old. I can tell you it's not a very smart thing to do. If that's to the wrong hand, it's a reflex, and and it will extend its paw and make a swiping motion. And I got a little scrape on my hand. right? So it's always important to know that. But as the nervous system gives an immediate feedback, whereas with the endocrine, takes a little while, takes a couple of while. But both of them, the nervous and the endocrine, they coordinate the various activities of the body parts. Let's look at number 2, a malt sex attractant. Now, these are chemical messengers, and what are they called? While the answer is C, pheromones, right? So pheromones is not on the syllabus for us, but pheromones is chemical attractants which are usually secreted by animals and, as seen here as well, insects. Yeah, you often ever wonder, let's say, how it is an insect could follow or know where to find a female and so on, because pheromones or these sex hormones, chemical attracting hormones, are given off, and the male moth can actually smell it and it can actually follow it. So very important there in terms of that. The sex attractant for moths, these are known as pheromones. Okay, let's look at number 3. Hey, let me take out my book, my mark book. Who answered the first question, by the way? Yes?
Ravina.
Davina. So looking at today's Wednesday. Time flying. Behind. So, Ravina? Yes, thank you, Ravina. You answered quite a bit as well last day as well. And who else? Anybody else answer the question thus far? Nobody else. Okay. Let's continue. What are chemical messengers that are produced in one body, in one region, but affect a different part, a different body region? Based on these, chemical messengers that are produced in one body region, but affect a different body region.
So that hormone.
Neurotransmitters.
Neurotransmitters, yes, that's quite right. But all of those are classified in terms of neurotransmitters, messengers that are produced in one. But notice what it said though, chemical messengers that are produced in one region but affect a different body region. Now, yeah, you could argue, could you argue that a hormone is produced in one region? Indirectly, yes, because it has to come from the master gland and then it's transferred to another region, and then you have secretion occurring. But the ones which are, when you hear the word chemical messengers in particular, specifically, those are relating to enzymes, right? But yeah, I could see how you could make the argument for both neurotransmitters and hormones, because they are both chemical messengers, but are they produced in one? Yeah, in one body region, but in fact, yes, they are. You could make it, but the quote-unquote best answer would be enzymes. All right. Let's get number 4. The endocrine system. I think I answered this one already.
Yes, sir, you give away the answer.
Yeah, the endocrine system is quicker than the nervous system. Is the endocrine system, right? That is false. Yeah, it's false. The nervous system, because think about it, a mosquito, lights on your back, yeah, boom. You immediately will look to swat it off. So the response is very quick. Whereas with the endocrine system, depending on the hormone, like as I said, with the exception of probably adrenaline, because adrenaline does kick in very fast, as you know, with certain reflexes, particularly the fight or flight. Some people might be aware, which is why it's not a good idea to corner people or make them annoyed where they don't have an exit point, right? Because it could flare up. Right? And that's a safety mechanism that has been hard written into your genes, and that used to save you from disaster when you were hunter-gatherers. Let's say you're surrounded by a pack of wolves. Yeah, it's one out of two things. One is either you're fighting them wolves or you're running like crazy, right? So other than that system, all of them usually take a little while to respond. So that's why the endocrine is actually a slow system. It's false. Certain cells respond to one hormone and not another, depending on their receptors. Is that true or false?
True.
Okay, who answered that one?
That's Tasha.
Hi.
Natasha,
Yes, sir.
Robert Stamus.
Yes, sir.
Good. Could you want to give a gander as why that is so? Why is that so? You have any idea? Feel free to say, I
Well,
don't
I
have any
did,
idea, you know.
but so I'm not too sure what
Do you think that would be beneficial? Let me ask you this. Do you think that's a good thing that they can respond to one hormone and not another? Do you think
Yes,
that's a
sir.
good thing? Why?
Yes,
Why is that important?
because if they respond to one, sometimes I could, like the immune system, it might harm you in
Yes,
some way.
yes. I like how you're thinking. Yeah, because think about it, it's selectivity. How else, would you be able to target certain parts of your body if all the cells responded all the time? That would be madness, you know? So that's why you're quite right in terms of selectivity is important, that only certain cells have certain receptors. So these receptors is like an address. Think about if you're sending out a letter or you're sending out, you have a group chat, and you're sending out to some of your friends in particular, which is a subset of all the people in your WhatsApp group. You'd specifically want it only going to them. And in terms of the receptors that they would have is because they belong to a particular group, right? So therefore, when you send out the message, it only goes to them and it doesn't go to everybody, right? So in a very similar way, your body, the cells in your body, there are certain receptors, and that's how you can identify. Think about it. If you want let's say for argument's sake, you want your liver to respond. Sorry, you want your kidneys to respond um, to insulin. How do you target, the kidney? Well, there's specific receptor on the kidney cells that are unique, that you wouldn't find on any other cells. So therefore, you could send a message which is, let's say, complementary to that receptor. And it binds to that receptor. And once it binds, then it activates the receptor, and then you have things going on inside the cell. But it will only bind to a specific receptor that it recognizes. All right, so very good there in terms of that. Let's look at the other one. Endocrine glands secrete hormones into the bloodstream for transport to target organs.
True.
Yeah, that's how they work. Who is that who answered there?
Eleanor.
Eleanor. Thank you. Right, and that is very true. And that is just how they work. In terms of hormones, they're secreted into the bloodstream, and that's how they move. So back to the person, when we are talking about this one, in terms of coordinating, that is what she mentioned, that, in terms of the transport of the hormones, they go through. So the endocrine system was the correct one, but in terms of their transport, they do go through the circulatory or the cardiovascular system. Good. Let's look at number 7. Hormones are substances that fall into 2 basic categories. What are they? Hormones.
The non-steroidal.
Yeah, right? Non-steroidal and steroidal hormones. And this just has to do with their structure, right? In terms of steroid. And when you think of the steroids, let's see if we can have a quick look at that. Right? In terms, they use steroid. So importantly, when you look at steroids and so the steroid skeleton, it usually consists of a carbon backbone, right? And here you see the ring structure. So this indicates if you were to blow it up, right? So this is a steroid, a non-steroid here. Well, no, the steroid skeleton is present in cholesterol, right? If you notice, all of these red numbers here, they stand for a carbon atom, right? So in this case, cholesterol, it has 17 carbons, plus it does have some extra ones, 2 methyl groups attached at positions 10 and 13, and at position 17, you have a methyl. This is a trimethyl group, well, CH2, in which the H is replaced by 3 CH2 groups. So you have this carbon moiety attached at carbon 17. But all that being said, steroids are usually big, rather big, as you can see in terms of their structure, heavily influenced by carbon structures and rings, has these ring structures within it. Let's see. Like this one, right? So this one is showing, we just looked. As a steroid, right? This is maybe we could blow it up a little bit, right? Formastine, these are some drugs, right? Formastine and exemestane. And then you have aminoglutamide, fadrozole, letrozole, and anastrozole, right? Do notice that the steroids, notice the big ring structure to the central area, whereas the non-steroids, they have a small, while they do have the rings, they don't have them all linked together in a clump. They're separated as seen here, right? So you have two, they're separated, and you have another one, you have one, right? So good way to tell the difference between steroids and non-steroids. Steroids generally have this clumped appearance in terms of the ring structures all joined together, okay? So non-steroids, right? So hormones are substances that fall into two. They're both non-steroidal and steroidal hormones, right? Very important just to remember that one. Let's go forward. Non-steroid hormones are produced by the adrenal glands, the ovaries, and the testes. Is that true? Right? All of these are produced by the adrenal, ovaries, and the testes. Right? So the answer here is false. Right? So why is it false? Anyone wants it? Not non-steroidal, but steroidal, right? So who answered there? That was Miss Rock? Nope.
Nope, Eleanor.
Eleanor, okay. Eleanor, and who was the person who piped in after the fact? Eleanor, and who originally answered the question?
So
Eleanor?
I piped in, Diana.
Pardon?
Diana.
Diana. Archibald?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good, all right. So with this one, right, non-steroidal, it's not non-steroidal, but steroidal hormones are produced by the adrenal glands, ovaries, and testes. And what is produced by the adrenal glands? I forgot. What is produced by the adrenal glands? What hormone?
Adrenaline.
Adrenaline. Who's that one? Who answered there?
Daniel.
Michael?
Daniel.
Daniel. Very good, Daniel. Right. So adrenaline. Right. Adrenaline is produced by the adrenal. What's produced by the ovaries? What
Estrogen.
hormone? Estrogen. Who's that one who answered there?
Eleanor.
Eleanor. Right. Good job there, Eleanor. So estrogen, and then the last one.
Testosterone.
Testosterone. Who answered there?
Eleanor.
Eleanor again, yes. So testosterone, that is produced by the testes. What effect does testosterone have on the body? Let me hear some new voices. What effect does testosterone have on the body? In terms of males, what does it, especially during puberty, what effect does testosterone have? Anybody wants to guess? What does it do?
It deepens the voice.
It deepens the voice. That is one, right? Who answered there?
Susanna and somebody
Eleanor.
Eleanor, right? And who else?
Susanna.
Susanna, good, right? So it deepens the voice. Anything else? What else does it do? In terms of
what about
facial hair and
facial
stuff,
hair, very good.
Muscles get more dense.
Right, who is that one? Diana, Archibald, very good.
Yeah.
Right, you gave two good answers there. So you have deepening of the voice, you have facial hair, you have also muscle development, which is why even though you do see women bodybuilders, they could never physically get as large as a male. It's just muscle mass. Men just genetically have more muscle mass than females. I hear what you're saying. So I know some women who have a lot of muscle mass. Yeah, but generally we're talking on the whole. Males just genetically, they have more muscle mass, right? And if they do look to develop it, they will get larger. Go ahead.
Libido, the increased libido.
Increased libido has to do with testosterone. Yes, that is very true. right? In terms of that sex drive, that has to do with that. And interestingly enough, when you have high levels of testosterone, what does it do to your hair? Anybody knows? And I hope I'm not misquoting. High levels of testosterone does what to hair? Does it increase hair growth or does it take it away?
I think it increases it.
It
Actually,
increases sales, get facial hair and stuff.
Actually, I think it's just the opposite.
Serious?
It takes it away. Let me check. And testosterone. So
So women who have facial hair, what causes that then?
genetics. They have a predisposition for it. And with them, if you were to measure, now the thing is this, with both, you do have maybe a very small amount of testosterone, which you would find in women. But with those persons who, as you might be well aware, have some people who have beard and mustache, females, you do find their testosterone levels are high, abnormally high. What does come to mind, some of us might remember, Samaya, there were two runners. There was one from India, and there was one from South Africa. Samaya, right? Casta Semenya, sorry, I was saying Samaya, right? So this was an image of her, and Casta, as you could see, she with her, what they found, 400-meter runner, 800 champion. And they did check her testosterone levels and they found it was high, right? Now, mark you, this was her image back then to show you what PR could do. Look at her now, changed up her image and so on. And they found that she then had an advantage in terms of the racing because of the high testosterone levels. She was able to have a greater muscle mass, and they did feel that she had an advantage over persons who were not running, who didn't have those high levels of testosterone. So now they made it, which I find is very unfair. They make it such that she has to take tablets which will decrease her levels of naturally occurring testosterone. Now, initially they thought she was taking tablets or drugs with high levels of testosterone, but believe you me, they followed her around for a significant time, isolated her, and did blood testing, and they found that just naturally she had high levels. So to answer the question which was asked before, why is it that some people have mustache and beard? It's a genetic thing, and they just by nature, they have high levels of testosterone, as opposed to, let's say, quote unquote, normal women who have lower levels. They're just some of them who have high levels of testosterone. Similarly, there are some men, and you probably could identify with it. They have higher than usual levels of testosterone, and it manifests itself sometime in characteristics which are associated with estrogen and women. Namely, let's say hips. I don't know, have you ever seen like some men that have like really broad hips like a woman? Unusually broad hips. Men don't usually have, I don't know if unusually broad,
Yeah.
and they look from behind, quote unquote, they look like a woman. That has to do, if you were to do a check on them, do a blood test, you'll see that they have unusually high estrogen levels. So genetically, there just are some persons who have unusually high levels of testosterone, as in the case of here, Casta Semenya, and also there was an Indian runner as well.
And so what about the medical conditions such as polycystic ovaries, which causes the testosterone level to be high in females too?
I'm not familiar. I'm familiar with polycystic ovaries. I didn't realize there was a component related to high testosterone levels, which actually cause it as a causative agent. So I'm ignorant of the fact. So I can't comment on that. But it could be then again related to a genetic component then, if that is the case of high testosterone, a correlation. So I suppose in terms of a treatment like that, they could give drugs which actually limit the production of testosterone, I'm guessing, or break down testosterone to some extent, or increase the levels of estrogen to nullify the testosterone effect. Well, it'll be interesting to know that, for polycystic ovary, what they do there. So this was Duty Chan here, And similarly, just like Castor, she had high levels of testosterone. The only difference between her, they wanted to do the same thing with her in terms of banner. She carried them to court, the international IAAF. She carried them to court, and she won. She won the case, and they couldn't actually limit her from, from actually running. Right, but just by nature, there are persons like Duty-chan, and as we mentioned, Castor Semenya, who just have naturally occurring high levels. And as a classmate mentioned as well, which is very interesting, in terms of polycystic ovaries and high testosterone levels. Didn't know about that one. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the hormone that is released in polycystic ovaries is androgen or something like that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, but I don't think it's testosterone.
Let's have a look. Here we see in polycystic ovaries, total testosterone may be slightly elevated. Extremely high levels may indicate androgen secreted in tumor. Normal levels of free are between. So there's just, let me get a reputable NHS. Yeah, high levels of insulin causes the ovaries to produce, right? So this is the NHS, this is the Ministry of Health in the UK. And what we do have, what they're saying is with polycystic ovaries, raised levels of testosterone, a hormone often thought of as a male, although all women usually produce small amounts of it, but you do have it existing then, raised levels of, so there was truth in that statement then that yes, you do have raised levels of testosterone, as well as LH as well. Both of them are unusually high. So there is truth in that, yeah, in that statement. Let's look at our good friend. Do bald men have more testosterone? That I say, let me just verify that one. I wanted to fluctuating testosterone can result in balding. Testosterone produces this hormone called dihydroxytestosterone, which is responsible for balding in males. So therefore, if you do have high testosterone levels, this hormone called dihydrotestosterone could be present in higher than usual amounts, and that is usually responsible for male. Let me see if this definitively. Oh, but there is not a correlation. Men, well, according to SC, I don't like this website. I'll look at something a little more. But men could have low, but that would make sense because you have normal, it doesn't seem to have a correlation. So there is not a definitive correlation then between high levels of testosterone. Not definitively. It might be there, but there's not a definitive correlation. So you can't say then that somebody who has high levels of testosterone will be bald. Can't say that because there are persons who have low and they are bald as well. So there's not a direct correlation between the two. Unlike when we looked at polycystic ovaries, we do see there's a connection. High levels of testosterone are found with persons who do have PCOS, all right? So, but there isn't that correlation with hair loss and males. All right, good. Thanks for bringing those questions and the information there. Thanks very much. Let's go forward. Yes, any question? Okay, let's go on to number 12. Steroid hormones lead to what? What do steroid hormones do? Yeah, that's what they do in terms of the steroid hormones. As one of the things they're important for replications of hormones by the cell's DNA, right? So they're very important then in terms of, it's very important for the replication of DNA. And interestingly enough, which is why when you're looking at certain persons, who when they want to increase muscle mass, they will take steroidal injections because it does increase the replication of the cells, skeletal muscle cells. So you would put on more mass, but that is steroid dependent. So they therefore will have to keep taking the steroids in order to keep that mass up. So those are the persons, who are being a little naughty where that is concerned. And the reason why, because hormones are very important for the replication, by this replication of hormones, it replicates the cells, increase the number of cells present. Okay, that's 13. Where would you find the pituitary? The pituitary is located beneath the thalamus in the brain. Is that true?
False.
Let's have a look.
True.
Yes,
I
go
think that's
ahead.
true.
It's below the hypothalamus. So
Let's have a look. Here we see. So the question is asking, the pituitary is located below the thalamus. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. All right. I know it to be true. I just want a diagram to show it. Here we go. Excuse me. Right? So if you look at the pituitary gland here, it is below the thalamus. So in fact, that statement is indeed true. Right? So the pituitary is just below the thalamus. So for this one, the answer is true. Right? It is located there. What does the hypothalamus regulate? What does it do? Does it regulate heart rate?
All of them, sir.
Above.
All right, who say all there? Who is that? Who answered that? Who answered that one? Yes. Who answered all?
Eleanor.
Eleanor, very good. Yeah, and
But somebody else answered too.
who else answered? I hear a voice in the back. Talk to me.
Archibald.
Archibald. If you don't mind giving me a first name, Diana. Yeah, I have it listed as my first name. Good. Right? It regulates heart rate, body temperature, water balance, glandular secretion. So let's have a look at the hypothalamus. This one doesn't show where the hypothalamus. Let's see if we could. This one I think shows it. Okay. If you were to look here, right, you see where the hypothalamus is, right here. So since it regulates all of those things, right, it's not a good idea to lose it, right? What would happen if you lose it? What would happen if something went wrong with your hypothalamus? If it regulates your heart rate, body temperature, what would happen if somebody blow it out? Yeah, you'd be talking to the ancestors very quickly, right? So, you know, sometimes when, like I say, I'm not an advocate of violence by any means, but the so-called quote-unquote gangster execution, when it's paid to kneel down and tell you bend your head forward. So in terms of the trajectory of, let's say, so when you bend forward, and let's say they shoot from this direction going forward, there's a high probability it will hit this area here, right? And it could hit the hypothalamus. There's a high probability and destroy it. So, you know, that's the end game. You don't have no replacement parts for that one, right? So in a case like that, you're much better suited to run, right? Always remember that. If ever, I'm not saying that you ever will be. Let's go forward. The pituitary gland is divided into two, the posterior and the anterior. Is that true?
True.
yes,
Yes,
it's
so
All
true.
right. All right. Okay, who answered there?
Natasha.
Natasha.
Ravina.
Natasha answered, right? Ravina with an R, let me see that. Good. Anybody else?
Rishma.
Rishma Ramsawak, very good. Right? So that is very true. Let's have a look. Right? So the pituitary, two portions. If you have to go back, I think it shows it here, the pituitary. And this one actually shows it. Right? The pituitary gland, the anterior and the posterior. Right? The anterior, as the name implies, the front, and the posterior. Right? The posterior and anterior. So that's why it is true. Next question, the posterior pituitary stores and secretes what? What does it store and secrete?
Oxytocin and ADH.
Yeah. The ADH and oxytocin. Very true. Right? ADH and oxytocin. Who answered that one?
Ravina.
Ravina. And whom?
Eleanor.
Sorry?
Eleanor.
Eleanor. Who else? I was hearing another voice.
Kamal, KML.
Oh, Kamal. Yes. Kamal Mohammed. Is it short for Camalodin?
Nope.
Nope. But I'm
Finally,
sure.
that was supposed to be on my birth paper.
Well, Camalodin? And they just
Yeah.
put Kamal. I understand. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad. I got this.
Yeah. I know that goes. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. So we see ADH, oxytocin. Hello, Jello. Oxytocin. Nice hormone. What does it do?
For birthing.
What you're saying, particularly for birthing, right? And what does it do? Give me one word. Really, what does it do? One word.
It helps dilate.
That's not one word.
Contracture.
Thank you very much. Name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie. Now, the person who was saying helps dilate, in terms of the contractions, you weren't wrong, but I just wanted one word. That's all. I was just being a little naughty, right? It helps with the uterine contractions to get that bundle of joy out. And we'll speak more to that when we're looking at, when we go into reproduction in the next couple of weeks, okay? That's why oxytocin. Does oxytocin do anything else?
I think
It
with regards to
releases
like
the
caffeine or
milk.
something.
In terms of milk,
Oh, milk.
Yes, it releases the milk from the mother.
right, it causes release, right? So
Yeah.
who's that there? Very good. Ravina, right? And again, we'll speak more to that when we look at the reproduction. Right, so oxytocin is oxytocin, anytime you hear oxytocin, first thing should come to mind is reproduction, right? And most critically, uterine contraction, getting that bundle of joy out. Squeeze him, squeeze. Yeah, uterine, that's what it does. Very important for that in terms of its function. Good, let's go again. The posterior pituitary now, what does it do? It stores and secretes what? Oh, we mentioned that already. All right, ADH and oxytocin, sorry. ADH promotes the expulsion of water from the collecting duct, a portion of the nephron. Is that true?
False.
No, what does ADH stand for?
Antidiuretic hormone.
Right, and what is a diuretic? A diuretic will make you do what?
Pee more. Urinate.
Void your bladder or pee more or urinate. That's what a diuretic does. So therefore, an anti-diuretic will make you what? Make you pee more. Same pee more. Will make you void your bladder or keep it in.
Retain it.
Right. So ADH will make you actually retain it. So when they say, does ADH promote the expulsion from the collecting duct, a portion of the nephron? That answer will be it's false. It doesn't. No,
False.
It doesn't. Right? Because a diuretic, just by its very name, anti-diuretic, it doesn't promote water loss at all. Right? In terms of it going into the collecting duct, then goes to the ureters and then expulsion. Right? So it doesn't do that, but rather retains it. Very importantly, there, it promotes the reabsorption from the collecting duct. All right, good. The function of oxytocin, what does it do?
All of the above.
Right? Well, all of the above, right? In terms of, it causes the uterus to contract, stimulates the release of milk, and it also, as somebody quite rightly said, it induces labor. So D, all of the above. All right, who answered that one? Let me hear. Natasha. All right, anybody else? I heard it was a set of people answer there. Who else? Any other voices? Natasha. Okay, all right. So that's what oxytocin. Let's go another one. Which hormone dramatically affects physical appearance? Let's go to this one. This is an interesting one.
Growth hormone.
Ooh, hello, growth hormone, right? Because what does growth hormone, or by the way, let me ask first, who answered there? Diana, thank you. So what does it do? Diana Archibald, or Brewster? Archibald?
Archibald.
Yeah, okay. So what does growth hormone do? As the name implies, what does it do?
Develop.
Would stimulate growth.
Yeah, just as the name implies, some things not difficult, quite rightly, right? Some things are not difficult, right? It builds up, it repairs healthy tissue in the brain and other organ, and it speeds up healing after an injury. Helps to build, as the name implies, right? It's a growth hormone, build muscle mass. I don't like this reference. It's always important, you know. I like this one better because it's a school called Colorado State University, right? Growth hormone, somatotropin, right? Growth. So bottom line, as the name implies, it affects growth in your body. So which is why, going back to the question, in general, the production of gonadotrophic hormone increase. Which hormone dramatically affects the physical appearance will be growth hormone, because it, as implies, growth, let's say to the skeletal system, your bones will get longer. So physically, you'll just see a change. Very importantly there in terms of growth hormone. Let me ask this one, 23. If the production of growth hormone increases in an adult after full height, only certain bones respond, and this results in something called acromegaly. Is that true or false?
I think it's true, sir. I'm not sure.
Yeah. True. Who's that the answer there?
Eleanor.
Eleanor. And do you know any wrestlers who have acromegaly?
No.
I'll give you a hint. Those who follow wrestling, a wrestler from India. You have another one which I remember, but it's way before the time. Andre the Giant, but that was way before the time. Kali, yeah. So, and when you do look at the wrestler,
H-A-L-I, sir.
huh? I spelled it wrong.
H-A-L-I, yeah.
Yeah, the great Kali.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. And so in terms of acromegaly, it's usually they're large and they have usually distinctive facial characteristics in terms of a protruding forehead and an extended chin and high cheekbones. And it's usually characteristic of acromegaly. So if you were to look acromegaly, right? Acromegaly, like for instance, here as shown here, you'll see is this the forehead, the chin, and the high cheekbones. Those are usually characteristics of acromegaly, right? And there are lots of persons. There's the one who I was trying to tell you all about way before your time. This was Andre the Giant. He had it, but it's not too prominent. He had long hair, so it's kind of hiding it. But you can see the chin, have a little meat to the face, so you can't really see the prominent bones, sunken eyes, and the large forehead. As I said, his hair is covering off a bit of it. Right? For those of us who, I spelled it wrong. For those of us who follow James Bond, I don't know, anybody here, I don't know if you all follow. There was this one, what's his name? Jaws, I don't know if you all remember him, no? Okay, that's probably before your time as well. But there was this villain, his name was Jaws, in one of the James Bond movies. But again, the prominent forehead, cheekbones, and the protruding chin. So this is acromegaly, right? So there's him shown here, all right? So do remember that in terms of, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sarah wanted to,
okay, sure, no problem. Okay, right, so that's acromegaly there. All right, we'll do one more and then we'll go over to the other one on metabolism. Okay, so two more. The thyroid gland is attached to the trachea just above the larynx. True or false? The thyroid gland. Where would you find the thyroid gland? Well,
below the larynx. above.
It's below the larynx or your voice box, right? So if you were to look at an image, and quite rightly, as you said there, this is your larynx. I want it labeled. Right, so here is your larynx, here is your thyroid. So it's really below. So it's not above. So this answer will be false. All right, who gave that response there?
Archibald.
Anna Archibald, very good. Right, so it is below. And we'll do one more and then we switch over to metabolism. Calcitonin, I like that one, calcitonin. Which is 34. Calcitonin, does it regulate calcium level in blood, is balanced by the action of parathyroid, increases the deposit of calcium in bone, or all of the above?
All of the above.
Yeah, it does all of the above. All right, who
Yeah,
answered there?
above.
Who answered there?
Natasha.
Natasha. Right, anybody else?
Ravina.
Ravina. Anybody else?
Susanna.
Susanna. Good. Anybody else? No. Okay, good. Right, so that's exactly what it does. Calcitonin, very importantly, it does all of these functions. Okay, good. So that's the endocrine part. Let's look at the other part now. Let's look at metabolism. All right, let's have a little bit to go again. So fight them, hang in there. It'll be all good, as they say. All right. Question number 1. All right, I want you to think about it. I'm coming at you.
It's true. Everybody knows what the energy.
It's true.
Right, but I want you to give me a reason behind it. A reason. I want you to look for the reason. Right, so like so keen. Think about the reason. You're gonna give me a comprehensive answer. All right. So I gave you 30 seconds to think on it.
So because it's fuel for the body.
All right, so energy is defined as the capacity to do work. And in the body, how is energy is usually trapped? What is the general unit of, how is the energy transferred? Is locked up as bond energy in what molecule? 3 letters.
ATP.
ATP. Yeah. All right, very, very important there. But by true definition, as I rightly said, you might have picked this up in another course in physics, if anybody ever did physics or general science. This is the definition. It's the capacity to do work or the ability to do work is energy, right? And energy of motion is referred, so this is true, energy of motion is referred to as, and again, it's from physics, a half mv squared, right? Right, it's kinetic energy. And what is one of position? That's potential energy, right? Because of your position, it has the potential to do work, right? And that is dependent on height. All right, I like number 4. Sam, a biologist, was told by a friend that the electric company was able to create electricity. Now, this is not on the syllabus, actually. I wouldn't look at it. So it wouldn't go there. But if we were to look at it, the answer would be, the conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but can only be. So let's look at number 7. A cell can take in energy from its surroundings without losing energy to it. Is that true or false? False. All right, who answered there?
Shady.
Shady, good. Miss Davis, good. Now, why is that so? What makes it false? How could you correct it? Correct that statement. It'll take in energy from its surroundings. If you were to change without, without losing, change those two words. What word could you replace it with? And the answer would be, but it does lose, right? So in this case, it will lose. So while it takes up, it does lose energy to its surroundings, right? So that's what would make it true. If it is you wanted to change it up a little bit. All right, let's go down a little bit. Let's go to our good friend, 14, ATP. What do this that says ATP stand for?
Adenosine triphosphate.
What you saying? I like it. All you line up and all you stumbling over one another. Very good. All right, let me get some names.
Ravina.
Ravina, very good, Ravina. Some more names? Uh-huh.
Diana.
Diana. Mm-hmm. Anybody
Eleanor.
else? Eleanor. Mm-hmm. Who else? All right, just those three. Very good. Right? ATP. All right. Stands for adenosine triphosphate. And it's composed of what? As the name implies.
D. Adenine, ribose, sugar, 3 phosphate groups.
Adenine, right?
Ribose, sugar,
A sugar and 3 phosphate
phosphate
group. Yeah. Adenosine triphosphate. So the phosphates are attached to the sugar, as is adenine, right? Who answered there?
Diana.
Diana, very good. Miss Archibald, right? So that's what it does. So you have, let's see if we can have a look what ATP looks like. Right, structurally, right? So here it is in terms of adenosine triphosphate. Here's the ribose sugar. Here is adenine. And here it is 3 phosphates, PO4. P1 phosphate with 4 oxygen, that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. You also have hydrogen attached, right? But these are the phosphate groups, 1, 2, 3. This is the ribose sugar, and this is adenine. So it's adenine triphosphate, right? And that's ATP, right? Which of the following molecules is an immediate source of energy in cells? Huh.
ATP.
Which one is, yeah, we just mentioned it, right? And what name there? Who answered that one?
Shady.
Shady, yeah. And that was very good because even though it might sound obvious, right? Some people miss that. But it's an immediate source of energy. You don't have to bother to break it down. It can be used right away. Because when you think about the breakdown of glucose, right? If you have to look at the breakdown of glucose, when you do break down glucose in the body, you use it to actually manufacture ATP. Right? So for instance, if you're glycolysis, which we would speak ever so briefly about, glycolysis, glucose is broken down, right? And then you have directly, you have 4-ATP, you have some of that NADH and the FADH. This is shunted to the mitochondria via the Krebs cycle. And now you have the generation of more ATP. So 32 from one molecule of glucose, you have 36 for synthesized at the cytosol within the cell, whereas the other 32 are synthesized in the mitochondrial matrix via the Krebs cycle. All right. So very important to note, glucose has to be broken down in order to create ATP. But if you have ATP, you could use it right away. So that is very important to appreciate. So that was a very good answer. It might have been simplistic, but it's very important to appreciate that fact that ATP, that's the currency. Once you have it, you could use it. You don't have to break it down into anything further, but you could use it right away. So that was very good. All right, let's do 5 more. The energy that is released from ATP when ATP is broken comes from?
Ribose sugar.
A phosphate group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the phosphate group.
Yeah. Those are high energy phosphate groups. I am mad at you. That was good. I think you were thinking generally in terms of the sugar, because of the fact its structure, ATP, you have the ribose sugar, and you have the phosphate. And then you have adenosine over here, adenine, sorry. You're thinking about the sugar breaks down. But the thing is this, with ATP, usually the first bond is broken, the first phosphate bond to give you ADP plus the high energy phosphate. If you were to go down to the level, let's see if we could have a structure of ATP. It might so that energy is bond energy. In other words, ATP has those three phosphates. I wonder if I can get a diagram that shows the release of that energy. So the energy is actually stored in those phosphate bonds. And when you break the bond, you actually generate energy, right? So when you lose a phosphate bond, ATP going adenosine triphosphate, going to, let's say, adenosine diphosphate, right? Plus an inorganic, here we have inorganic phosphorus then. This has phosphate, it's now going to ADP plus a phosphorus group. You now have the release of energy when you break that bond, the phosphate bond. You will not, you don't want to go down to the level of the sugar, because if you destroy the ribose, well, you wouldn't be able to then resynthesize ATP using ADP, right? In terms of ADP plus the phosphate going to ATP. So that's why it doesn't go down to the level of the sugar itself, but it just stays on the ends, right? And not only that, if you look at the very structure of ATP, all right, I like this diagram here. So we mentioned this is ribose sugar, there's the adenine, and you have the phosphates here. It's easier to break these bonds in terms of this bond, this one, and even this one, before you actually get to the sugar itself. So, but if you destroy the sugar, you destroy the whole structure of the molecule. And therefore, well, you wouldn't be able to recycle in terms of, let's say, adding back. So ATP going to ADP, which is 2, and release of this high energy phosphate, which could then be used to drive things such as muscle contraction and so on. But by the same token, you could add on a high energy phosphate here to recreate ATP. But if you destroy it by destroying the sugar, yeah, you wouldn't have the molecule anymore. You wouldn't be able to make ATP anymore, right? So that's why, in terms of the energy, it comes by the bond breakage of one of the phosphate groups. ATP goes to ADP plus phosphorus, and in so doing, it releases energy. All right, very good. All right, 3 more. ATP is not used for which of the following processes?
Diffusion.
Why you say diffusion? It's right, but why you say it? Any particular reason? In terms of the definition of diffusion, what is diffusion?
From a lower concentration to a higher concentration.
Right. So in other words, diffusion occurs once you have a concentration gradient. Once you have a difference in concentrations from one side to another, in which you have a high concentration separated by some membrane, diffusion will occur naturally. It doesn't require any energy for it to occur. So for instance, you might be, if somebody hot and sweaty walks into a room, what happens after a couple seconds? Whole room starts to smell salty, right? So what happens there is the high concentration of quote unquote smell molecules on the person, it diffuses into the room because you have this concentration gradient. It moves from high to low. Even though in this case, you'd say there isn't a membrane, but just moves, you have a concentration gradient. So for diffusion to occur, all you need is to have a difference in concentration, a relatively high concentration, a relatively low concentration, and the movement of the molecules occur. You don't need any energy. So therefore, that is why this answer is correct. Who answered that one? Who answered it? Yes? Diana? Okay, very good. Miss Archibald. And who gave the explanation? Somebody gave an explanation or something like that?
I answered. What was diffusion? Me and somebody else answered.
And your name is?
Shania.
Pardon? One more time. Shania?
As well.
Shania?
Somebody.
Right. And who else? Don't be yeah?
Ravina.
Ravina. Okay, very good. Very good. All right. Let's go for a couple more. Which molecule, all right, what will form when ATP is initially broken down? What will be formed?
So I think I just give the answer.
ADP.
Yeah, just I did. See, right?
Phosphate
ADP.
and energy.
Yeah, I kind of just gave the answer. Quite so. Very, very perceptive of you. Very perceptive. Yes. All right. Let's look at 20 then. Which statement is not correct in the cycling of ATP? Which one is not correct?
So it's not D. I'm not sure.
No, you're right. Now, the funny thing in your body, right, is that we don't really store, we'll store not a deep, because we need huge amount, you don't store the ATP, but you store glucose, and is actually released kind of on demand. You know, you don't want to store the ATP, but it's stored as a it's stored in glucose, and then glucose is broken down to generate ATP, right? Or as you might be well aware, it's stored as fat in the liver, right? So that's how it's stored in terms of energy. But glycogen, yes, glycogen in the liver, but it's not really, ATP of itself is not stored, right, as a rule. I hear in you, why do you not store ATP? Probably because it's an unstable molecule, maybe it's volatile, maybe it's easily broken down. So a more stable form to store it, storage, will be something like glycogen or fat, you know, as the case might be, right? So the wrong thing is that it's not huge amounts of ATP are stored. Not the ATP is stored, but rather substances which could be broken down into ATP. So this one is incorrect. All right, 21. Which molecule is considered to be the energy currency of cells? Oh, sorry, for number 20. Before we get to that one, 20. Who answered on 20?
Natasha.
Natasha. Sorry, Natasha. Let me see that one. Natasha Roberts.
Yes, sir.
Thomas. All right, good. All right, let's go on. Which molecule is considered to be the currency? Right, ATP. We can't stress that enough. Let me hear who answered there.
So the whole class.
The whole
The whole class.
The whole class.
The whole class. Okay, I'll give.
Sana.
Okay, give me a second. Let me put a mark for
The whole
everybody.
class.
Put a mark for everybody. Right, Akia, Allison, Amrita, going to the whole list. Avenel, everybody, Wayfoot, Selena, Wayfoot. I wish it had a function where I just click and say whole class, give a mark to everybody. I need to write my own software. Chelsea, yep. The here, yep. Danielle, yep. Okay, good. All right, ATP. All right, let's go for our last two. Let me give all you something to chew on. All right, this one is for 2 marks. Look at 34. Right, so you have a metabolic pathway. A going to B, then going to C, then going to D. All right, so A is broken down to B is then further broken down to C, and C is then broken down to D. And then you have these things above here, enzyme 1, enzyme 2, enzyme 3. So going from A to B, you require enzyme 1. Going from B to C, you have this enzyme 2, and then going from C to D, you need to have enzyme 3. So which of the following statements is false? Think about it, don't answer right away. I will give you all 30 seconds to think on it, and then I will ask for a response. Okay, time up. I was not good at math. Which one it is? Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. B. Who's that
B.
answer there? Who answered first?
No, I say E, and I'm unsure.
I
Is that
say
Not sure?
B.
So I
Because
say
I
B.
think A is the substrate.
E.
Right, so what B say? A is the product of enzyme E1. Is A the product?
No,
No.
A is the
B is the
substrate.
product.
It's
Yeah,
not the
A is
product.
the substrate. Ah, very
Yeah.
true. Who answered first there? Who was telling me about the substrate there? Who answered? Who was that? The first person to answer, who tell me? And they were just talking about
Oh, E
substrate.
like the A.
Diana, right? That was a tricky one. All right, Diana Archibald. Yeah. Yeah, you misread it. Not a problem. It's happened to me all the time, Kamal. Right? But you still had the fortitude to put forward your response. And for that, I tell you what I'll do. You'll get a mark for that because that was quite good to actually still have the fortitude to do that. All right? Okay, last one. Which of the following is not an enzyme? Out of all of these.
Maltose.
All right. So which of the following is not? Anybody else have anything to say? Which of the following is not an enzyme?
Oh yeah, maltose.
E.
A group of enzymes that
E,
help
sir?
digest fat.
Mm-hmm.
C.
Right, maltose.
Maltose is our substrate.
And what is maltose? When I hear the word maltose, what is maltose?
A sugar.
It's a sugar. Yeah, it is a sugar. Right? Now, in general, how do you know a substance is an enzyme? Looking at A, B, D, and E, what common thing do they all share when you look at the words?
It ends in
ASE, yeah. So as a rule, right, usually enzymes end in the letters ASE. Right? So lipase, what does a lipase do? What does it work on? What class of food?
Lipids.
Lipids, yeah. Urease breaks down urea. Ribonucleases, ribonucleic acid, and dehydrogenase, hydrogen, dehydrogenase. It works with
The
reactions
removal of
involving
hydrogen.
removal of hydrogen, dehydrogenase. Yeah. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Question? Okay, good. Let's do one more. Yeah, it's going so nice. It's going so nice. Let's see. Last one. I like 55. Let's have a look at 55. All right, look at 55.
Complex.
Which one are saying it is?
D.
Somebody was answering, yeah?
Substance complex.
A substrate complex. Okay, we have that on the floor. We have D. All right. Anything else?
E on the floor.
D on the
B.
floor. B as in butterfly.
B.
Why you say B?
Yeah, I would say B too.
Why you say that?
Cyanide is an inhibitor.
Yeah, it tells you it. Look at the first word. It's an inhibitor of what? Of the enzyme. So, and if they ask you then, what is cyanide? It's an enzyme inhibitor. Okay, you all see the humor there. But it is, because it's stated, it's an inhibitor of the enzyme. It's an enzyme inhibitor. That's just what it does. Substrate complex. Substrate complex means it binds and it gives another larger substance. Well, it binds to the substrate to form this new substance that is known as a substrate complex. Now, does cyanide do that? Now, in terms of the mode of action, It doesn't bind to the substrate, but it inhibits the enzyme which progresses or which is responsible for the progression of the reaction. So that's why substrate complex would be incorrect. Substrate complex would have meant that the cyanide binds to the substrate itself, whatever it's acting on, but it doesn't do that. It binds to an enzyme that affects the reaction. So if we go back here, let's go back to this. If cyanide was binding, let's say, to A, and then forming something, a new complex, call it B, then you'll see will be the substrate complex. But how cyanide works, it would bind, let's say, to E1. It doesn't affect the substrate, but instead it affects the enzyme. And because it affects this, the reaction then will not progress from A to B. Because in progression from A to B, you would need this enzyme. So therefore, that is why the answer is enzyme inhibitor. All right, so that was very good. Who said enzyme inhibitor?
Kamal.
Kamal
Shady.
and Shady, good. And Shady. And who had the fortitude to say substrate complex? Who was that person? That was very good because you stated.
Stephanie.
Gotcha. Stephanie?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That was very good, Stephanie. And who else?
Sarah.
Sarah? Sarah. Very good, Sarah. And Stephanie, right? But the correct one is enzyme inhibitor. All right, last one. Which of the following is considered a vitamin? Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. Think about it, 30 seconds.
Niacin.
Niacin, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Niacin.
Niacin.
Why you say that? Because you know it, right? You do know niacin. And what's another name for niacin? Is that anything else? Or is it just known as niacin? Or does it have a letter assigned to it, like vitamin A, B, C, D, E?
So is that B
Vitamin B,
B3.
B3, yeah.
B3 is niacin. Right. So who answered for niacin there?
Kamal.
Susanna.
Kamal and Susanna. Kamal, you're talking, and Susanna.
And Izan.
And Rishma.
Suzanne, Izan, and Reshma.
Ravina.
Ravina and Reshma.
And Stephanie, sir.
Ravina. I'm not seeing a Reshma. Or Reshma, yeah. Niacin, but it's very important to remember that one. Yeah?
Stephanie, yes, sir.
Stephanie, is that a good thing you tell me, Stephanie? Thank you. Stephanie, right. Last one, final one. Okay, no, that's plants. Let's look at 67. Very good. Who is that one who answer?
Diana.
Diana. You're on top of it. Yes, Diana. Diana. Archibald. Yeah. Very good. And that is true. Yeah. Right? Chemicals and energy cycle through living things. Right? So the whole notion is recycled energy. And going back to that concept of energy cannot be created or destroyed, but could only be converted from one form to the next. All right? So that was very good work today, people. So what I would want you to continue to do is to go through it at your leisure. You know, these questions, you could do them, and then when you hit submit, you'll get a response. You'll know if you're correct or not. So it's a nice way of actually checking your knowledge, on the topic itself. You don't necessarily have to do all at once. You could just do a couple and then submit it. All right. So let me stop the recording.